Welcome everyone to today's webinar. Our topic for the day is why I chose the family business, real stories from next gen leaders. We're excited to have with us two folks who are working in their family business, who have had their own career paths and their own experiences, and they're willing to share with us today. So we're going to learn from them, but we're also going to learn from you. So again, if you would like to participate in the conversation, the chat is the best option. Go ahead and choose everyone and share your questions and your observations as we go. Before we get started with the conversation, a little bit of a guide to participation. All of the functions for this program are available in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You will submit questions for the presenters and be a part of the conversation through the chat. So anything you want to know, pop into the chat. That will be the place for it. Today's presentation is also being recorded and will be provided within 48 hours to you via an email. We'll also send some additional resources, so be looking out for that after the session. If for any reason you don't get it, please do reach out to us at that time. We'll be happy to follow up. And with that, I would love to introduce our presenters. First, today with us is Matt Miniat. Matt is the Chief Operating Officer of his family's company, Miniat Holdings, LLC, which is a diversified food products company, which he joined in 2011. Matt's path into the business included roles in purchasing, operations, and business development. Previous to joining Miniat, Matt worked in another food business, Dawn Farm Foods, as well as in technology. Hi, Matt. Welcome to the program today.
Good morning, everybody.
Also with us today is Jamie Shah. Jamie is the president of her family's company, Chem Impacts, a distributor and manufacturer of high-purity lab chemicals. Jamie's experience also includes serving as COO of the Spice House, roles in venture capital and investment banking before joining her family's firm. Hi, Jamie. Welcome.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Also with us today is my colleague, Nicole Zeidler. Nicole is a consultant working with family-owned businesses. She does quite a lot of work with the next generation and the families that she serves. Nicole is going to be our trusty chat facilitator today. She'll also help us with Q&A at the end. Thank you for being a part of the program today, Nicole.
Morning, everybody. Thank you.
All right. So we are going to get into a little bit of a discussion to start with getting to know Matt and Jamie a little bit more and their businesses. So Matt, why don't you start us with telling us a little bit about your family's business and your role?
Sure. Kristi, thanks for getting us started. So as you can see here, Miniat is a fifth-generation family business. We have Miniat Holdings is really the parent company for two operating divisions, South Chicago Packing and Ed Miniat. And we have three locations. South Chicago Packing has one in Bridgeport on the south side of Chicago. I'm here at Ed Miniat, our headquarters in South Holland, and we also have another meat plant for Ed Miniat in Carrollton, Georgia. Kristi, if you can move down a little bit. Thank you. As mentioned, we're a fifth-generation family business. We're started here in the stockyards in Chicago. And we have about 1,000 employees across two divisions in all three locations. South Chicago, we're the largest animal fat processor for food products in the United States. So I'll get into the details in a second. And on the meat side, we're really the pioneer for sous vide cooking proteins, meats for national restaurant chains and industrial food manufacturers here in the United States as well. For Miniat, so what we do is we take raw meat mainly from slaughter plants across the country. We'll prepare that, we'll trim it down, we'll marinate it, and then our main value add is fully cook it. And so then we'll be able to slice, dice, and provide that to our customers. The two main customers are industrial manufacturers. So think of your frozen food manufacturers that are using meat ingredients for their meals, and then also national restaurant chains such as a Chipotle and Arby's, Jimmy John's, that will use these for the center of the plate items for their sandwiches, their burritos, as well as different meals as well. And then at South Chicago, we take animal fats, predominantly tallow and lard, and we will process those, create bakery shortenings. So they'll be used for pot pie crusts, other baked goods, and then also we'll create frying oils for a number of different national restaurant chains across the country, including your favorites, Popeyes, Bojangles. So if you really want great fried chicken, I would suggest use beef fat. And then most recently, we just launched our consumer brands division. So started in 2020, right after the COVID outbreak. We started actually selling our beef fats on Amazon, particularly focusing on high-end fats, including Wagyu. And this has been a fun new division for us, selling directly to consumer, something we haven't done in the past. And so in terms of, so that's the business. I'm the chief operating officer, so I manage our South Chicago packing, essentially the P&L. I have the business reporting to me. I started, I'll get into my past in a second. So that's South Chicago packing, and then on the meat side, I manage our operations and supply chain. I started about 13 years ago, which is amazing how fast time flies. And I've started in the meat side, working my way up through operations as a production supervisor, through purchasing. Then in 2018, I jumped over to South Chicago packing as a general manager, where I learned to manage the commercial side of the business. And that's when we later created the new consumer brands. And so I feel I've had great experience and opportunity to learn all the different aspects of both businesses. And one of the benefits that I hadn't really appreciated until recently is both of our businesses are actually, while we sell to many similar customers and we're in a similar food space, they actually operate quite differently. The oils business is really generally a low-cost industry. And so helping, running and learning that business has really taught me the focus on cost, that industry very well, which has really helped me understand the difference between the two, what makes each tick, and ask better questions as we look at each business independently.
Thank you, Matt. That's a
Kristi.
great overview of the business, and we will talk a little bit more about your journey into it in a little bit. Jamie, why don't you share a little bit about your family's business?
Yeah, probably very different from Matt and his business. I mean, what you're seeing on this slide is probably very difficult for people to relate to. It's not something you would necessarily eat, although our products do go into pharmaceuticals and other life science types of research. So we're a manufacturer and a distributor of high purity laboratory chemicals. And our whole model is that we focus on the chemical so our customers can focus on changing the world. So we have customers who are working on all kinds of research. One customer is trying to figure out how to turn paper mill sludge into biofuels. Another customer is trying to figure out how do you, well, this is kind of food related, how do you make vegan cheese stringy, which I think is an interesting problem. Then we have people who are using our products in like the pneumonia vaccine. So we're a chemical company, but if you have other family members who are not experts in the field that you're in, I'm not a chemist. So I feel like rest assured that you don't necessarily have to be a 100% expert to join the family business. You can go to the next slide, Kristi. We are really proud that we're a family owned and operated business. We've been in business since 1981, so we're in the second generation, and we really feel like, and we say this at all of our family meetings, that we're the luckiest people in the world. And we think that it's not that it's always easy, it's not that it's always enjoyable, I would say, but the part that's exciting is that we get to do it together. We get to work on what our customers care about, and we get to do it at a pace that we feel comfortable at. So having this long-term generational view is something that we feel really proud of, and is actually a really big motivator for our customers to want to work with us as well. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Kristi.
Thank you, Jamie. And just, can you give everybody a snippet on your role? And
Yes, of course. So I'm the president of the business. I've been in the business for about 10 years. I have a sister who's in the business as well. She's our VP of legal. And I, similar to Matt, kind of started in the warehouse and kind of have worked my way up since for the last 10 years.
perfect. All right. So our first real question about your experience today is it's connected to what we heard from people who signed up for this program and wanted to join, is about how people get drawn into working the business. So what attracted to each of you to working in your family's business?
Should I start? Okay. I had a long and windy kind of career before I joined the family business. I had worked in investment banking. I was at Google on the products maps team. And I had kept finding myself wanting to have more control, have more responsibility, focus on how I could create change. And I felt honestly that the best way that I could do that was through the family business. And it was actually never something that I ever intended to join. And even my father had never actually forced us into joining the business. His mentality was always, if I build a great business, my children will want to be at the business. So he had always just modeled what was most important to him, which was being able to spend time with family, even though he was also working on the business. So we would go on trips to visit vendors. We would go to conventions, and that was like kind of how we spent our summers. And so it wasn't actually something that I had consciously thought about, but over the years, wanting to have a larger and larger impact on my own career, I felt like being at the family business was the most impactful way I could do that. So that's how I joined.
Matt, what was your experience?
In some cases, it was similar. So I would say if you asked me, probably when I was in high school or college, if I was going to join the family business, I would have said, I'm not sure. If you asked my friends, though, they would have said absolutely, because I was always talking about meat and fat. And so I graduated in 2009. I worked for a startup for a little bit, and then I went back and forth about joining the family business. It had always been such a key piece of who we are. We talked about it. My grandfather, every family meal was generally about the family business, every large get together. And then the other thing is, we're surrounded by products and customers that we service. So there's just a lot of pride in those products. And in college, I remember we, with some friends, drive 45 minutes to go find the local Chipotle. And that was really fun knowing that, those are products we made and products that we really helped get them off the ground, helping them take something that they did in the back kitchen and being able to bring it to a larger, national stage. So just being very interested in what we did and the products we make, and having an interest in the business itself. Like, that was the key for me. Is I knew I was going to go into business. I remember talking to one of my friends in college and saying, whatever I do, I want to make something that I can drop on my foot and it'll hurt. Like, I can, it's got to be something physical that's just, that I can see myself in manufacturing. And so to join a company that was food manufacturing and just happened to be our family business was key for me. And in terms of timing, again, I had worked outside the family business a little bit prior, and we were about to undergo either a big expansion or building a secondary site for our meat company. And I just remember thinking I'd rather join now and be part of that than wait and, have everybody else enjoy all the fun and the hard work and then come in on the backside of that. So that really pushed me from a timing perspective to join in 2011.
That's fantastic. I think what I heard you both say was a little bit of a surprise, right? Not necessarily sure this was going to be your path, but there's an opportunity for impact, and there's an opportunity in the company that drew you in. So with that in mind, what were your expectations as you joined the family business, and how did that compare to your actual experience?
I will say I was very naive going into the family business. I actually had no idea what to expect. I just knew, to be honest, I didn't actually even really know what the business did, which was actually kind of silly looking back at it. I had Actually, I mean, I graduated with my MBA, and I knew that I wanted to do something impactful, and I thought that being at a small company would help me do that. But it was not until my first day on the job that I really actually understood, oh, this is what my dad has been doing all these years, which honestly, looking back on it, it was very silly. We're a small business, so we don't have a big onboarding process or program, and a lot of it is very self-driven. And I think navigating the ambiguity was scary, and it was very, I didn't know what to expect, but I think actually that was the challenge I needed to solve in order to become a leader in the business. So I think the thing about the uncertainty was actually the thing that I needed. So in the end, I learned a lot about quality, operations, and I let the customer lead me through that. So what I did was I always focused on what does the customer want, and if the customer cared about where's my order, I would think about, okay, how do we improve our operations? If the customer was thinking about the quality of our product, I would think about, okay, how do we change our quality system? And through that, I ended up working my way throughout the whole business, led by the customer more than anyone else.
I would absolutely echo what Jamie said, and actually, I just wrote down ambiguous. That was almost a slap in the face when I got not. It was a big surprise when I got to the business. It was I guess the first thing was first, it's a real business. I grew up surrounded by it. At the time, my father was president and CEO. My grandfather was chairman of the board. You just grow up surrounded by that, and family is casual, or your family members, and then you walk into work one day and it's, oh no, that's your dad is the boss, and if you call him your dad, that's kind of weird. And so I do remember I was the second one out of our G5 to join the family business, and so there really were no guidelines, there were no rules about what to do. I had to learn all that stuff myself, made a lot of mistakes about how to be a family member in a family business. There was no one to tell me what we should or should not do. And again, from the ambiguity standpoint, I also walked into a place where it was not as defined about what I should be doing every day. And I think that was done intentionally with the idea that that was a great thing to help teach me a lot of different areas. What it created for me was a lot of angst because I didn't have a specific defined role. But I had this huge feeling and want to be productive and be adding value to the business. When I wasn't, I had a tough time with that. And so, again, it was not a great transition for me entering the business, and I had to learn so much about what I should or shouldn't do, often by putting my foot in my mouth and learning, and then teaching the later generations or later members to join what I had learned.
Thank you. I want to note that people are dropping questions in the chat, and we want to continue to encourage that. Nicole will help us pull some together for the Q&A, and I might pick on a few as we go through the conversation, like this one. So, I think we know that some people are, we're using the word ambiguity, but some people are questioning whether or not they want to come into the family business. I'm curious about what you guys think makes what about your family and business made the experience rewarding for you? And maybe you could hit a little bit on, we've got a question in the chat about, you both had work experiences before you entered the family business. So how did that support you? Or how would you connect your ability to, from what you did before coming into the family business to what you did when you were there?
So I guess speaking to the value of working elsewhere before, I would highly recommend that people work outside of the business before joining the business. It gave me two things. One, for me, myself, it allowed me to not have second guesses. I never was wondering, oh, what does it feel like to work at another company? I had that experience. And then the other thing is that it really credentialized me within our business and even to our customers. where people recognized that it wasn't just nepotism at play here. It was somebody who had worked in other places where their name wasn't on the door. So I think that it was really worth it for me to do that. Kristi, what was the first part of that question?
About what was it about the family and business that you think made your work experience rewarding there?
Oh yeah, and this actually kind of relates to Karen's question about she's concerned that the family business might not be enough for her children. I found it so rewarding because it was something that I could actually control. When I was working at Google, it was such a large organization that, you know, I was such a small piece in that puzzle. At the family business, I actually really got to see change. I actually got to affect change. I think for me, that was really important. The size of my business is smaller. We're about 40 people. So it allows us to do that more. It might be harder if you had a family business that had thousands and thousands of people. But I felt like my ability to have agency was much stronger at the family business. Thanks.
As is most often the case, I'm going to completely agree with Jamie. And
I'll let you go first next time, so that way I can agree with you.
So I also agree the value in working elsewhere. One is just the tactical skills you gain, the learnings, learning something outside of just what your business has seen over the last decade or decades is very helpful. And to bring that in is just that's good for business, whether you're a family member or not. But then the second piece is it gives you confidence and it gives you a voice. And so for me, it was both working elsewhere and then also getting a secondary education. That both of those helped me feel and try to quell this not concern, but this feeling that, I'm in a position because my last name's on the door. And so that drives me. It's frankly one of the biggest things that drives me every day is wanting to prove to everybody that I deserve this role. I deserve what I'm doing based on the work I've done, not based on the family I was born into. And so getting that outside experience really goes a long way to help that. And then the second piece is, what is it that is the rewarding side? You'll probably hear a theme from me about love for the business itself. And so for me, just like Jamie said, I remember the first role where I felt like I actually had an impact on the bottom line. That was a role in purchasing. And prior to that is when I had all this trouble, and kind of struggled joining the family business because I didn't know what I was really impacting or not. But the minute I could tie my performance to results to the bottom line or improvement on some KPI or some metric was a really big deal. And so when I really think of the most rewarding pieces, it's the ability to impact a business based on the work I can do. And then looking around and realizing, hey, what we do, that's so important for so many people. So many people rely on this business to pay their mortgage, put food on their table, send their kids to college. And, that's impactful both from the role that I have, but also then the history of the family business and what we've been able to provide people as a family, which you wouldn't really appreciate unless you actually join the business rather than just being part of the family that owns the business.
So I keep hearing impact. And so let's dive a little bit more into that. What is it that you think that you each bring, as sort of next gen leaders in your family business? What is it that you think that you bring that's uniquely beneficial to the company? And how has that been embraced?
Go ahead,
Jamie,
Matt.
take a stab first.
You sure? You go ahead, yeah.
So I believe, especially from the next gen standpoint, I'm able to help bridge the gap between what built the business and got us here and where we need to go. Family businesses really have a lot of pride and history, and that's a key and important piece in what makes them successful. But what made a business successful a decade ago or 2 decades ago might not necessarily be the exact thing that it needs over the next couple decades. And so being able to bridge that and essentially recognize and hold on to the the celebrated culture, the legacy, the story of, the one time someone drove through a new snowstorm to service a customer, and those stories that really get, they ring around the halls of a great business. So how do you hold on to that, but also introduce new management concepts, new ways of thinking, new ways of challenging and growing the business, and try and blend those cohesively? That's where I feel that I've been able to do both, coming from the family. So recognizing and appreciating that past, but also recognizing the need to push and challenge the future. It's probably the main area.
I think for me, it's bringing process and scalability to the business. As a founder-led business, everything was very hub and spoke. Everything always came back to the founder, which made my dad one of the hardest working people I know, because he at all hours was working with the warehouse on certain things, working with their customers on certain things. And at the end of the day, it just wasn't possible for our business to scale effectively. So my role has really been, in some sense, of the idea of succession planning. How do we make the business expand beyond just him, but also just expand beyond any individual, so that the business can perpetuate? My goal is to really bring process, automation, scalability to every single part of the business, such that it can continue in perpetuity without any one individual.
Both of you navigating the change for the future of the company. That's a wonderful place to be contributing. You've shared quite a bit about your successes. Can you share who'd like to share a challenge that they've experienced as being a entrant into the family business, and how you navigated it?
We spoke to navigating ambiguity, and I think that was definitely a challenge. But I think the other part is the piece related to like personal identity. And I think when you're in a family business, people take their work very personal. They really tie themselves into it, particularly if you're in a founder-led business. That founder, it is their entire life's work is this business, and they may treat the business as another child, just as you are. And I think navigating that, I guess maybe like the separation, like a enmeshment that has been created between the founder and the business, and still making that previous generation feel needed, feeling wanted, feeling like we care for them, but separating that from their day-to-day needs in the business. I think there's a lot of confusion that happens with, just because you're not doing the thing every single day doesn't mean that you're still not valued in the business. And that's a thing that we're challenged with in our business right now. I wonder how it is for you, Matt.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. I guess that's there, with the family side, there are challenges that are just never going to really go away. You're kind of always kind of keeping different things at bay and always working on them. When I think of a specific challenge I faced, I mentioned as I joined, there really wasn't a playbook for me to work off of. And I remember specifically joining a couple meetings and probably being a little too casual with my father in those meetings, recognizing that later recognizing, well, he's a CEO. And so very specifically, I gave a presentation and referred to him as dad a couple times. And I remember someone coming up to me afterwards and saying, look, if you really want to build your own path here and become Matt the leader, it's probably better for you to call him Dave, just like all of the rest of us. And so that was a big aha for me. And one of the big things that's always helped me so much in a family business, and Jamie's heard this 1,000 times, is this concept of hats. And so, as you grow in a family business, whether you have, spent a lot of time going and learning about different ways family businesses are run or whatnot, there's this concept that comes up sometimes of, you're wearing a lot of hats. And so I've embraced that so much that I'll often be in conversations and actually pretend to put on a hat or take off a hat, depending on the different roles that I might face. And so as I walk into the door and I close the door to talk to my dad, I might put on the son hat. Hey, what are we doing this weekend? Or, hey, this is a family thing that we want to talk about. And I might go into a different meeting and it's a staff meeting and I'll put on my employee hat. And then I've had, conversations with family members and I'll put on my brother hat and give advice about, hey, I think you should do this. And I'll take that off and I'll put on my president of SEP hat and say, if you do that, please give me a lengthy time so we can react as a business and we can manage. And so that concept of trying to manage all the different roles and be distinct about which one you're operating in, for me has really helped navigate a lot of these confusing areas. And it's helped me share to somebody where I'm coming from. So I'm not, having a conversation kind of in a family way, but someone sees it from a business perspective.
Jamie, how have you managed that dynamic, right? The ability to engage as a daughter and engage as a colleague and leader.
It's really tough because I think I love Matt's idea of being different people at different times, but it's also hard to separate who you are. You are still all those people all at the same time. I don't think I've necessarily managed. I don't think I've necessarily managed it well. I think I've just kind of shown up as who I am, and I don't know. I think maybe the bigger thing is making sure I understand what the other party needs. Like when I'm in a particular situation, are they looking at me like I'm the daughter or the employee, and are they bringing certain biases to that conversation? And then how do I kind of just put it all out on the table so that we're transparent about everything? Because I recognize that these aren't like cut and dry situations or solutions. These are actually very complicated relationships that are dealing with complicated issues. So I try to be as transparent as possible and try to call out the biases if there are any.
I think you hit on the importance of authenticity there, right? So being your authentic self and being able to call out those situations. And this is awkward because this.
Right.
So let's just talk about this. That can be really helpful.
And I think it goes a long way with employees, actually, more than anything. I think employees can feel very uncomfortable telling you something about your parents that they may not like. And the more that you can show up as you yourself and have as open of a view as it is as possible allows them to have a stronger relationship with you. And I think sometimes prior generations are expecting their next generations to be their puppets. And I think that undermines both generations and really lose a lot of credibility in the eyes of the employees or other stakeholders.
Perfect. One of the questions that we see is around, have there been formal structures or formal efforts in your families to support this generational transition? So some families put in place family councils, some families have formal mentoring, or has there been anything that your families have done that's more on that structural or formal side that has been helpful?
Go ahead, Matt. You have 5 generations, so I imagine yours is a little bit more robust than ours.
Well, we have 5 generations. It doesn't mean we've gotten it right for 5 generations, but I would say we have many of those pieces in place. Like many things in business, having it in place and then having it completely executing 100% to a T are 2 different stories. Within the business, we've had, I'd say, multiple attempts and kind of successful periods of what we've called our family mentorship team. When I first joined, it was a was actually non-family members that were leading that, and it was really meant to help family members put together career pathing, understand and get great feedback from their the managers that are managing them. And again, that's at times gone in and out of effectiveness over the last 13 years. It just kind of got a reboot recently, and that was really helpful and fruitful. From a board perspective, so we have a single board. I saw a couple questions about board structure and all that. So we have a single board, does consist of some shareholders as well as outside advisory board members. And then we have multiple committees, and the committees are really helpful in managing those pieces as well. So we have a family committee that is really focused on helping to educate the business about the family needs and the family about the business needs. And also just create cohesion, create opportunities for people to interact and get to know each other on a different level. And then we have a couple other committees as well, just like many other businesses. But yeah, the structure is important, and those places, those, I guess, entities are really helpful. But at the end of the day, they're only going to run as well as the individuals who participate in them and how committed they are to that process. And so whether you have them or not, the family members that are in the family business, having the discipline and appreciation to consider all the things that Jamie mentioned and all the different, hats and complex situations you might find yourself in. To me, that's probably the most important piece, taking that seriously and having the empathy to understand someone else's viewpoint, whether they're a family member or an employee or a bank or customer or whomever.
Yeah. Our family business, we have like a corporate governance board that the owners of the business are. And at this point, it's just the first generation who are owners of the business. And then we have a family meeting that we have, which are family members who are in the business. And then quarterly, we'll have a financial review for all family members, even those who are not in the business, so they can understand what's going on in the business. As we think about our family meeting, our goal is for us to want to keep coming back to the table. So we really think about ways to make it enjoyable, make it so it's not contentious. We do talk about the business all the time, but we try to make it so it's, I guess, a more interactive, meaningful advisory type of session versus too operational in the business. We also do an annual trip with the entire family and all of the grandchildren and things like that. And I think that goes a long way because, again, it's about how do we create a stronger family? I think if family bonds are strong, it really serves the business better. So we try to think about it from a place of, like, how do we meet the needs of the family member holistically versus just the family business?
Appreciate that both of you have bits and pieces, or possibly big bits and pieces of structures, but the focus there is on the discipline, the focus, the intentionality, and the relational aspects of that, right? Like, we're just going to keep coming back to the table and making an effort at this.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, I mean, there is always conflict, different levels of conflict. But I think previously we used to view conflict as a very negative thing and something that would be tried to be avoided. And now we view conflict as a very important piece of our business. So that way we can all feel bought into whatever outcome happens. And we're learning to navigate conflict more effectively by trying to implement different types of tools. I think we used to either do everything by consensus or avoid everything. And now we're trying to figure out, okay, when is this a time to accommodate? When is this a time to compromise? When is this a time to be competitive, depending on the individual and the situation? And having different modes has been a little bit more effective for us to navigate decisions that need to be made.
It's a great set of tools.
Still figuring it out.
I think we are all always figuring that out.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you guys one more question, then we're gonna go to Q&A. So many people may be watching this because they're contemplating their own career path, whether they want to join the family business or stay in the family business. So what advice would you offer for people who are considering joining the family business?
Matt, you want to go ahead?
Sure. So I'd say three things. First, for me, is would you join the business if it wasn't your family business? So it's hard. I mean, there are times when it's great and there are times when it's tough. And so, you really have to love the business, at least in my opinion. Because if you don't love the business and you don't find yourself super interested in the products and the customers and the operations and what it takes to fulfill those customers' needs, Frank, I think you're just kind of kidding yourself. You don't have a family business if you don't have a functioning and healthy business. And so the first question for me is, would you join it if it was, for me, if the company was, Jones family business? The second one, I really believe in, working elsewhere, working outside the family business. You heard both Jamie and I had those experiences. Frankly, I wish I probably had worked a little bit longer outside the family business and maybe gotten a different, worked in another company or two, just even for the experience, the learning. But again, most importantly, for me personally, just to know that, and to kind of continue to build that confidence that, look, I'm in this role because I've earned it. I'm in this role because of the successes I've had. I've made this business better. And also, again, the tactical learnings that you can bring back to the family business. And then the third, I believe it's really helpful to get a professional degree outside of what you're doing. So both Jamie and I got our MBAs. I found that very, very helpful. I found it helpful because once you're in a family business, it's probably unlikely that you're going to leave, go get different experience, come back, leave again. And so most of your experience is going to be pretty consistent with that one business. And so for me, getting an MBA, really through those case studies, I was able to learn how 100 different businesses operate, how they make money, what challenges they face, how they solve those challenges. And so I found that extremely helpful. Again, getting an MBA in particular, I think there are many different reasons to do it or not do it. But for me, it was just a very quick summary, and it almost helped me gain years of experience that I would not have been able to get by being in the same company, for the rest of my career. So yeah, those are probably the three main areas. And again, that's based on my experience and my timeline.
I would say for me, it's really important to understand just who you are as a person and have a level of self-awareness to determine, is the business right for you? Any business, whether it's the family business or any other business. And I agree with you, Matt. I think this should be a business that you would want to do regardless of the family. Is it, whether it's a product or a type of business, or I again, like, I don't have experience with chemicals, but I love our business. I love, being able to help support customers in their process. So I don't even necessarily think it needs to be that you love the thing that you're selling, but I think you need to love what you're doing for your community and what you're doing for your customers. So I think understanding that about yourself, and then understanding the business, its needs, and if the business is ready for you, ready for change, ready to take on another generation or another voice at the table. I think there's always this idea like, oh, it would be great to have all the family members at the table. And sometimes that's not actually the right thing for the family or for the business. And really making sure that everybody is on board with that. And what does that even look like? I think I didn't actually do a great job at that, really understanding, is the business ready? Who makes decisions? How are decisions made? Quite frankly, like, our family didn't have great governance when I started, and we're just slowly chipping away at governance. But just understanding how decisions are made and when those decision-making rights will be transferred to the next generation, I think that would be really helpful. So I think those two pieces, understanding who you are and then understanding the business and then seeing if there's a match there.
Thank you both for sharing your experiences. I think we're going to go into Q&A. We're going to invite Nicole back to the screen. Before we jump into the questions, I'm going to share just a little bit of additional information. We do have a feedback survey that we would love for you to participate in that will come up right after this session. So take 2 minutes and share a little bit about your experiences. We'd love to hear from you. We do use that information to plan future programs. I wanted to share with you a couple of additional resources as well. So recommended reading, Nicole has written an article on navigating the path, exploring a career in your family's business. So if you want more tips and tricks and ideas and thoughts on what you should be reflecting on if you're considering entering your family's business, that article is available. We'll put that link into the chat, and it'll also be available for you in the email that you receive afterwards. Also, there is a new book out called Own It, which is focusing on how to develop a family enterprise owner's mindset at every age. So if you're interested in how to prepare individuals to be good family business owners, and that individual could be yourself because it carries on well into adulthood, this has a ton of resources and ideas of how to develop that. That book is available through Amazon and other booksellers. And again, we will have that link available for you when you in the chat, and again after in the email. Also, additional resources. The website has articles on pretty much anything you could ever want to know about family business. All of our webinar recordings are available there, additional books. We've also just announced our educational events for this year. So later this year, we will be hosting 2 virtual events, one called Family Governance Essentials, which is really designed for people who serve in family councils, particularly as a family council chair. The other is Family Director Essentials, which is for family members who will serve as board members in their family's business. Registration will be opening soon, so you can contact our team member Sierra, or pop something in the chat. We'll follow up with you if you're interested in either of those programs. And with that, Nicole, what's in the questions? What should we be talking about?
Thanks, everybody. There's lots of good questions here. We had a couple come up that have to center around managing other family members in your business. That if you're in a position where you're managing other family members, particularly if someone is underperforming, what advice would you give to others in similar positions?
I think, Matt, you had a complicated situation.
Yeah. I guess my first answer is if you find a very great, simple way to navigate this, please let me know. The reality is this is a challenge in family businesses, and I don't think there is ever going to be an easy answer. I don't think there's an easy go-to or book to look at. Many of the things that I guess much of what's framed my responses to some of the previous questions has been surrounding, I guess the variety or the wide range of commitment that different family members might show when they come into the business. And that's, it's natural. And I think it's going to continue to grow as families grow and you go into every next generation. My personal solution and what we've been working to do is just continue to professionalize the business. And so that's good for the business overall, continuing to drive performance reviews based on, specific objectives and KPIs that are, there's no real ifs, ands, or buts, whether you met the measure or not. It's black and white. In some roles, it's easier to do than others, but it at least gives you an opportunity to, manage, I guess, take away the emotion part of that discussion and make it more factual and specific. That's, I guess that's in general just a good management practice. So that's not really unique, but it's a tough question. And again, that's where sometimes I'll go back, as Jamie again has mentioned, I'll go back to the hats conversation. I'll talk about, hey, look, as I have had some of these conversations as your manager, like, here are the numbers. They're not working. What can we do about it? I'll take that off as your brother or as your cousin or as your, nephew or whomever. How's it going? What's really going on? What can we talk about? What can we work on outside of the work environment? Are there things that are there that, we might need to talk about? But again, it's a difficult area, and it's one where, again, there are a lot of questions about how does someone know whether they should or shouldn't join? That's where I think you do a lot more of this pre-work to make sure that people that are joining, they're fully engaged or fully interested, and that they're not just kind of coming into the business because they feel like they have to, or because they think it's a nice, easy place to work and they can check in and out and, just ride the coattails of the business. They have to be fully engaged. They have to be able to show that there's a reason they want to join the business. They're going to bring commitment all the time, because it's really not trivial to join or to leave a family business. So I think it's worthwhile spending that time up front to make sure that everybody understands what it's really like being inside the walls.
Yeah, I would echo your sentiment, Matt, that I don't think that whether it's family member performance or employee performance, I actually feel like they should be one and the same. And if they aren't one and the same, like that's when you can actually run into issues. And to the extent that you can treat the family member as much like an employee as possible, the better. And having very clear job descriptions. I know, Matt, you had mentioned that you didn't have a job description when you started at the company, which actually created a lot of anxiety for you and made it difficult for you to know if you were doing your job well or not. I think by being very clear upfront with the family member of this is what your job is, this is what success looks like, this is what failure looks like. And I think that's fair for all employees and people. Everybody wants to know, what am I supposed to be doing and how can I meet that requirement? And I don't think the family business is here to do any favors for anybody. I think that if you're a family member who's not performing in the business, it could also be because you don't actually want to be in the business and you feel like you're obligated to be in the business. So when we say we're the luckiest people in the world, we also mean us personally. Like if I don't feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world to be doing this job and I'm doing it out of obligation, well, then this isn't the right place for me. So I think it goes both ways. I don't think that family members should get any special treatment.
Thank you both. We had a couple of other questions coming in from those looking to help and support their next gen family members coming in. So what efforts by family owners or management have helped you feel supported, encouraged in your experiences coming into the business and growing in your family business?
I would say, honestly, conversations with people like Matt. I think finding other next gen leaders has been so helpful. It's a very unique group of people who have this, I don't want to say burden to carry because it's also an opportunity ahead of them. And, people say heavy is the head that wears the crown. I think the more people you can find to share in those experiences, the better. So I found conversations with people like Matt, and I know Family Business Consulting Group has forums for next gen leaders, like things like that. I think are actually incredibly helpful because you're not in this alone.
Couldn't agree more. Even this morning, I was texting with some friends that are also in family businesses and other food businesses as well. But it's like a self-help group, and I'd say the support I received from the previous generations was almost the allowance and the encouragement to go find these resources. So
yeah,
it's no one knows what it's like until you're in it, and you can't really explain what it's like. For those of you that are in family businesses, just like Jamie said, of all the benefits and how wonderful it is, but also no one really talks about, or you don't really hear about the challenges, the stress, the burden that those within family businesses carry, unless you're frankly in it and you can experience it. So it's a unique group, and we all help each other out.
I'd also say, I don't know if you feel this way, Matt, but my spouse has been incredibly helpful. I mean, whenever I come home, he has to listen to me talking about family dynamics at work all the time. So that has been really helpful to me as well. Just having a spouse who is willing to listen, gives good advice, but also doesn't get overwhelmed by all the family stuff.
And then also can navigate their own relationships with the family as well. I mean, that's the other
Right.
challenge for spouses, because they hear one side, when you come home from work, and then we all see each other at family gatherings and all that stuff. So I agree, Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there were some questions about spouses as well, and whether can be in the business, or even roles related to family employment. My family business only had one rule, and that no in-laws are allowed in the business. So that cleared up a lot of confusion, and honestly, I do think it made it easier for us. But I know other families have in-laws allowed in the business that can create a lot of challenge.
I would say one thing that I've learned is that you have no idea what it's like to work with somebody until you actually work with them. And I can speak to that from, growing up with siblings and cousins and uncles and, fathers and maybe someday a son. And you just feel like you know people so well, and you do know people so well. But then you start working with them, and then you learn what it's like to work with them. And I've been surprised many times over, in both positive and in other ways as well. And so for me, I guess I love my spouse too much to encourage her to work with me, frankly.
Oh yeah.
It's a whole extra level of pressure on a marriage to
really
bring that
is.
into it too. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think one of the themes that I've heard as we've gone through this conversation is, and I think the reason that we wanted to have the conversation and why people are here with us today is because it feels like a very important decision, right? So this decision to join the family business, or some people are choosing not to continue their career within the family business. It feels like it has a lot riding on it. And you've also both touched on the path is not always clear. And so it's wonderful that you were here today to share your perspectives and your ideas and your experiences, and particularly appreciate your advice to others to do the same, because I think everybody can be self-reflective and think about what they really want out of their career. And to your point, Matt, about commitment to the company and all of these things, and ultimately it's a very important decision, and should be entered into with eyes open and with willingness to commit to what's to come. So appreciate you both sharing your experiences today.
Thank you for giving us a forum to talk about these things.
And thank you, Nicole, for helping us out in the chat and bringing those questions to the forefront. Thank you to all of you for attending the program, and we hope that we will see you at a future session.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.